Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'll be bringing you another tag. This is called the Jumbo Genre Recommendations tag, created by Dalton Gentry over at Stripcover Lit, and I was tagged by Dalton. There is a series of 12 questions. This is all based on recommendations, but not in the way we typically would give recommendations. Obviously you would ask questions of the person and saying, what kind of books do you like to read? What was the last good book you read? What exactly are you looking for in this particular genre? Action or whatever, but you'd ask a lot of questions before you could recommend something. But with the purposes of this tag, we are just basically picking out, I guess, books that we particularly like, that we think represent those genres very well, and that we think people would find enjoyable. So let's go ahead and get started. The first genre is science fiction. For that, I picked the robot novels of Isaac Asimov. I first encountered these back in high school when my English teacher, thank you, English teacher, assigned us the actual second book in the series, The Naked Sun. And this is sort of, brings you into the whole realm of, the robot rules, what they can and can't do, not causing harm to a human or through inaction causing harm and all that stuff. So all the robotic rules we learn through these books. For this particular one, The Naked Sun, it is very much a murder mystery involving our main character, Lige Bailey, who's a detective. He comes to learn of a murder on Solaris, a distant planet, where the people are very isolated. They don't like to be in contact with each other. They only communicate through like VidPhone, our equivalent of Skype right now, and they shun human contact. So all they have are robots around them working with them. But yet this person's found murdered and surrounded by his working robots. The robots wouldn't have caused harm to him. How did he die? Who killed him? How is it possible that he was killed and no robot stopped the murder? Nothing. All these, robotic rules come into conflict with this guy's death, and it's very hard to explain it. So, Lige Bailey is sent off to Solaris to solve the crime, but he's given a partner, R. Daniel Oliva, who's a robot, R for robot, and our main detective, Lige Bailey, doesn't like robots, as opposed to the people of Solaris. So it causes a bit of conflict as they're trying to solve this crime. But I was absolutely fascinated with these books when I read them. After reading the one, I sought out the rest and kind of read my way back. So this second one is actually even a good place to start. You'll find yourself wanting to backtrack a little bit and find the initial meeting between the characters, which is the Caves of Steel, the Robots of Dawn. There's a couple other ones that spin off afterwards, but these are the three main ones, and I highly, highly recommend those for science fiction. Next genre is fantasy, and like Mark over at Richardson's Reads, I'm going to choose Elric of Melniboné by Michael Moorcock. I don't have the books any longer. It's a series of novels, really slim little ones I used to have in the mass market paperbacks, and I read my way through all of them. All I have now is like volume 1 of the graphic novel. To get an idea of the character, he is albino prince, who's very weak. His life is sustained through drugs and herbs and magic, basically, until he finds a rune sword called Stormbringer, which gives him power, and he's able to fight with it, and it just builds him up, and he kind of looks like this once he has Stormbringer. So there's his rune sword, and I can see he is an albino prince with ruby red eyes. Real fascinating character. I actually drew this off of the second volume of the graphic novel, but I don't have that one anymore. But I fell in love with the character. He's sort of a dark character, melancholy, kind of brooding, always about, in the sick, poor shape he's in. His mother died giving birth to him. His father resents that. When his father passes away, he kind of ascends to the throne of Melniboné, and until he finds that sword, he, like I said, he's kind of a weak ruler. But he'll have a major foe and battles to face, and it's just a really exciting adventure, a fantasy adventure. After reading that, it kind of spun off and wanted to read more of Michael Moorcock's books, The Chronicles of Corum and Hawkmoon. I read my way through all of those, and he's such a really great writer, almost poetic in his prose at times. It doesn't quite come across that way in the graphic novel, and I'm so sad that I gave away my my little mass market paperbacks. I've seen some omnibus volumes here and there, but it's difficult to tell the order stuff that came in. Like The Dreaming City, I think, is a prequel, early short story, and they've appeared in various places, but at least with that mass market set, I kind of knew what order to read them in, and now it's, I don't know, they're all different compilations and things, so unfortunately I haven't come across anymore, and I don't know if I'm going to reread them, but I definitely recommend for people who haven't tried them. Number 3 is mystery. For mystery, I just can't go beyond my all-time favorite. I've got to pick Sherlock Holmes. They're very accessible, obviously by Arthur Conan Doyle. With the 4 novels, but just delving your way into all the various short stories. There's just intriguing mysteries within them, and the way Holmes goes about solving them. His relationship with Watson, who tells the stories through his diary entries. I just absolutely love Sherlock Holmes. I can't pick anybody else, really. Number 4, young adult. That was stuff. I was thinking, what really stuck with me. These, they could almost be. I guess I would categorize these as more young adult. They're the Tripod trilogy by John Christopher. It's a UK series. Book 1 is The White Mountains, and then you have The City of Gold and Lead and The Pool of Fire. The tripods are very much like those creatures you see from War of the Worlds. You can kind of see really elongated kind of versions. They stand on 3 legs. There are beings that have occupied Earth for quite some time, and we meet our main character. Is it Will? Yeah, just Will. I don't remember his last name, but Will. He's living in a small English village. He has a friend named Henry, and the way the tripods control the population is through caps in the skull. When they reach a certain age, they have a capping ceremony. They're pulled up into these beings, these robotic creatures, and they're capped. And then they're very much at peace when they come back. They're very angelic-like almost, but they are of one mind pretty much. They follow anything that the tripods say. But Will and Henry kind of rebel against this, and they hear that in the White Mountains, whatever that means, wherever the White Mountains are, that there is freedom. There's a band of humans that are living there that are free from the tripods. They've not been capped. So they set off in search of the White Mountains in this free society. And they encounter another young man named Jean-Paul, who's also heard the same rumors. And together these 3 are off trying to find this haven of freedom. Just a really, really good series. The UK did a TV series of it, but unfortunately never quite finished it. I've got some of it on. I had recorded off the TV, but I absolutely loved it. Really, really intriguing series. Number 4, horror. I could have gone anywhere with this. I mean, could have gone Edgar Allan Poe and classics and things like that. I went with something a little bit more obscure that also could have fit in the YA genre. This is The Creeper Man by Dawn Kurtagich. It's known as the The Trees Crept In. I forget this is the British cover with the British title. So The Trees Crept In is the US title. And the story is about, at the very beginning anyway, 3 young girls, they go off in the woods and they build this kind of figure out of twigs and mud and cloth, and I think they give it eyes, but they forget to give it a mouth, whatever, in their rush, but sort of like a protector, and they do some chants and things like that, and then they kind of run off, and but this thing has like kind of like a Slender Man kind of look to it when they're finished with it. And then the story kind of jumps forward, and we have 2 young girls making their way through this forest to a small house kind of in the middle of this forest. And they are 2 daughters of one of those girls, and they are meeting one of the other ones, who's their aunt, who lives in this house, and she's shocked that they have made it through the woods. What are you doing here and everything? And she's a little shocked, but she says, once you're here, you can't leave. He won't let you leave. And it's just a creepy ass story. The way it's told, it's kind of first person, but there's also parts where you have little notes and letters and post-its, and there are like hidden messages in the let's see if I can find within the bold-faced type. What you'll see there from time to time if you read the bold-faced type. Besides this general horror story, there's an underlying story as well that I was so surprised when I got to the end and all this was revealed to me. It was amazing. It just blew my mind. There's some really interesting kind of poems in the back here too. There's a man in the trees, a man with no eyes, but still he watches. That's the surprise. Stay away from the woods. It couldn't be clearer, but the trees are creeping nearer and nearer. Beware the creeper man. You can almost see him there too. There's his head. and arms, and this is the body with the legs. Love this cover. That's why I got the British cover. Didn't care too much for the US one, but I went out and got this as soon as it came out. I couldn't wait. Highly recommend that one for horror. Number 6, literary fiction. For that one, I went with a book I read quite some time ago. I read it as an advanced copy when it came out, shared it with some of my fellow coworkers. We all loved it. It just made its way around. That is Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. It's set in Barcelona, like in 1945, and we meet a young man named Daniel. He, along with his father, are going to a place called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. And Daniel's father tells him, you'll be allowed to choose one book that you must protect, but you can never tell anybody about this particular place. Not even your friends, nobody. It is a secret location only so many people know about, but he's allowed to choose whatever book. He roams through the mazes underneath there, chooses a book, and it is by Julian Carax. And he becomes fascinated with the book and wants to read more by this author, only to discover that someone has destroyed all the books this author has ever written. It's almost impossible to find anything else, and it's just a mystery. And where's this author? What's happened to him? Why is somebody doing this to his books? He seems to have maybe one of the only copies available that he received from the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. So thus becomes this mystery. The prose is beautiful, and I just got so involved in this that I went out and read The Angel's Game. I think it's the second title. There's another one that I haven't yet gotten to, but of these books from the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, you can read in any order pretty much, but I would highly recommend starting with this one. This is the first one that came out, and it's just wonderful. Next up, we have that was literary fiction. Travel. I had to pick Bill Bryson, one of my favorite. He's extremely humorous. I love the stories that he's told, but I have one particular favorite one, and that is Notes from a Small Island. This is, I think, the one he wrote. I realized I read this quite some time ago, but he's about to return to America, his home soil, after having lived in Britain for quite some time. And before he leaves, he takes a sort of farewell tour of this small little island. And the stories are just absolutely delightful. I highly recommend his travel writing, and again, this is one of my absolute favorites. Genre number 8 is humor, and for this I don't have a copy of the book, but I chose Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I've read several books by Neil Gaiman, but I've never read anything by Terry Pratchett, and this is, I guess you have to call it almost fantasy as well. It is a humorous look at the apocalypse, the coming apocalypse, from the point of view of Crowley, a demon, and Aziraphale, an angel, both who have been living on Earth and enjoying their life here since the beginning, but they've now been told that the apocalypse is coming. Crowley's been charged with switching children via the Antichrist to put him in a protective spot where he can learn his craft, his satanic craft, and bring about the downfall of the world. But there is a mix-up with the children, and everything kind of goes haywire. There's lots of humorous little things going on. There's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and then the lesser-known horsemen of the apocalypse, which I got the biggest kick out of, and their funny names they come up with. It's just absolutely delightful. I was laughing out loud as I was reading this. I highly recommend this one for humor. For history, I also don't have a copy of this, but I chose Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. I don't read a lot of historical books, but I found this exceedingly accessible to the average person like myself who didn't want to get bogged down with a lot of dates and information. This reads basically like a true crime thriller. You're following the life of H.H. Holmes, a serial killer in Chicago during the World's Fair, and the horrific way that he plotted to kill these women, and he was getting their skeletons and making money selling their skeletons, and the elaborate traps and things he had within this hotel that he'd lure people into, and they'd never find their way out again. It was absolutely creepy, but exceedingly well written, that I found myself just flying through it. Like I said, it's very, very easy to read for someone who isn't much of a history reader, basically. Number 10, Science or Nature. For that, I went with the books of James Herriot. I don't have the individual novels, but the All Creatures Great and Small books about Harriet and his life as a young Yorkshire vet. The only thing I have right now is a huge picture book, which is also full of short stories, and also would be really nice, maybe even more so, because you get a look of the areas and the places that he'd been, and you get interspersed with little short stories and nice little illustrations without, but I get an idea what life is like in the Yorkshire Dales and the quirky characters and the kind of horrific things he had to do as a country vet. But yeah, I really highly recommend James Herriot for nature. And next one is number 11, Craft. Books you've read to improve reading or writing. I have to pass on that one. I haven't really any suggestions for that. I don't read books on writing, and I haven't really read anything to improve reading. To improve reading, you just read. Number 12, Dark Horse. A book that doesn't fit into any category, and that I picked John Baird and Kevin Costner's The Explorers Guild. This is volume 1. It is The Search for Shangri-La. It is a very unusual book in that it is part novel, so you got text, but then you also have huge sections that are graphic novel. It reads like a Rudyard Kipling kind of adventure in terms of the prose is like from that era type, like The Man Who Would Be King. It's a little bit more stilted towards like the classical type language, but it's still very accessible. There are pages sometimes we get full color illustrations. It's an interesting story about Shangri-La and this two brothers. Well, one's a soldier, one's an explorer. And the explorer, something happens to him and he returns, and their sister sends a note to the other brother who's a soldier fighting and says you have to come back and your brother needs you, and something happened to him. He mentions something about Shangri-La, and they end up going on this search, and there are strange black-robed figures that are trying to prevent them from finding it. What's happened to his brother, and he finds several other people that have possibly seen it as well, including this young boy here. There are airships. There's a bit of almost like a little bit of a sci-fi element and magical realism. There's a little bit of everything going on within here, so it's hard to categorize. I remember finding it almost difficult to review it at the time, but it is. Like I said, it's an adventure. It's mystical. It's a classic. It's a graphic novel. A little bit of everything. Definitely hard to fit in any one of these particular genres. It has a little bit of everything. It does say volume 1, so I'm still keeping my fingers crossed that there will be, in fact, a volume 2. So that is the Jumbo Genre Recommendations tag. Thanks, Dalton, for tagging me in this. And go ahead and check out Stripcover Lit's channel. I'll put a link to their video down below. For this, I'm going to go ahead and tag a few people. I'm going to tag Momento Mori, in case Adam happens to be watching or still anywhere in the BookTube universe. Come do a tag. Graham Quigley, One Book, One Review. Hungry Bookworm. I'm going to tag Britta Böhler at the second shelf. I know she's trying to catch up on tags. I don't know if she's done this one yet. I don't believe so. And tag Booky Lorra, and then finally Crflamesfan. And if you're interested, go ahead and do the tag as well. And yeah, those are my recommendations for these particular genres. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.